welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the 86. Scratch that, Alex.
We're professional.
Mark, welcome to the 864 podcast. We're super excited to have you on. You know both me and Randall super well, and we'd probably call you a dear friend. Probably.
He would.
Yeah. And so it's good to have you on. We both, the three of us served together at the youth center and at the Way, and so it's fun that you get to come on and be our first guest of the show. So excited to have you on. And yeah, do you have anything else to share in my excitement?
I mean, here, Mark, he's a quarterback. He can just drain threes. Yeah. He's a pickleballer.
This man, if you've ever played basketball with him, he's getting all shy and embarrassed. But the man will literally beat anyone on the basketball court.
If you ever played with Mark, you did lose.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I don't think there's any truth in these statements, but I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, no. So I guess to start out, me and Randall both know obviously what you do and all that, but maybe tell all of our listeners what you do for a living and what kind of got you into that.
Yeah, so I work for a mortgage company and help people get into homes. So I do home financing. So why I got into that, I'm not really sure. So it's always funny. Like when I was a kid, I always went around and asked, like if we were in Verizon, at Sonic, wherever we're at, I'd always ask my dad, what does that person make? Like, what do you make at Verizon? What do you make here? And like what I do for a living is I ask people how much money they make.
Oh, that's cool.
So I was always intrigued on like, what does that job pay this much and this? And then now like, that's what I do. Yeah. So I think that is something that's cool that tied in. There was no like purpose. Like I didn't purposely seek that out. So that was one thing. And then secondly, when I was going through school, high school, college, I just did not want a salary or hourly position. So I was really attracted to commission-based pay. Huh. So, and I just thought like, the harder I work, the more money I can make, the less I work, I like that whole idea and concept. And so I think commission is what drew me to the industry. Then I just think that other piece is cool as well.
Yeah. So like being in finances, have you always liked numbers, or is it just something that you like more people than you like numbers?
I think it's a mixture of both. I think I've always been naturally gifted at numbers. I wouldn't say I liked numbers per se. Like I don't think I could be an accountant.
Okay.
Because I just think that's all numbers. So I think the balance of people with their numbers is pretty cool.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I honestly before I became a realtor, even began to know you, I would have not known anything about like financial, like mortgage companies or anything. So just like give us a minute blip into like what you do for a customer.
Yeah. So let's just say that you were interested in buying a house. Basically, you probably go on Zillow or whatever and say, hey, I want to buy that house.
Or work with a realtor.
Or work with a realtor, or you call Zillow and they set you up with a realtor, whatever. So then they're going to say, well, can you buy that house? And you're going to say, oh, I think so. But then they're going to say, go talk to a bank or whatever. And at that point, that's me, generally, if you got sent to me. And we just do an application. We look at credit. We look at income. We look at assets. And then we determine, if you can afford that house and send you a pre-approval.
Yeah.
So that's basically.
Sweet. Yeah.
Yeah. So like one of the reasons we wanted to have you on specifically is because we are looking for people who work a normal job, live a normal life, don't have to be a full-time pastor or whatever, but still find a way to get into the local community wherever you're at. And so, like, I'm assuming you work a normal 40-hour week. You're not one of those 20-hour guys who just has all this extra time to give away. Like, your schedule's fairly normal.
Fairly normal. I would say 9 to 5 with a little bit more than that, sometimes on the weekends.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
So he's a very normal person.
So normal.
Very
so normal.
Average.
No, that's good. That's good. And like Randall said, I think the biggest reason we asked you to come onto the podcast is, like he said, we want we want people to see into the lives of the pastors, nonprofit, all those people. But sometimes as an individual listening, you might be like, well, that's great. Like they do awesome things, but I'm not a pastor and I don't like, that's not my calling.
And
so
the majority of us probably won't end up being a pastor.
Exactly.
So.
But we wanted to kind of get also the flip side of like people that are normal and like work like a job and then get off of work and like, what do you do with your time? And like, how can you actually help out and still invest even though you're like that? So even though you work 9 to 5 and 40 hours a week, whatever. So yeah, I guess starting off, you volunteer at the Way, obviously. What first got you into that? Like why did something like that excite you? And like what made you decide like this is something I want to do?
Yeah, so I think Jake Spence, who's the deputy in Oconee County, a good friend of mine, actually started volunteering before I did. And he told me about a basketball ministry.
Okay.
And I mean, basketball plus Jesus. I mean, I was in.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's cool.
Athlete.
Yeah. So when I was in college or like just getting out of college, I always had something in my mind like that, like using basketball as a vessel, to reach, kids and whatnot. Yeah. So I didn't know if that meant coaching, if it meant nonprofit, whatever. And so when Jake told me that was a thing, it was like, oh my gosh, I can just volunteer. It was like the perfect mix.
Yeah.
So.
And you've been at the Way for how long? Because you've been there longer than I have. For all I know, it's forever.
No, I would say just a few years at this point, probably 2 or 3. I think when I initially started, I didn't come a lot and wasn't too plugged in. And then I think over the years just got more and more involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's cool because, that's another thing that I think is cool about you is that you like to play basketball, but then at the same time, it's like basketball isn't the only thing that draws you to the Way at this point. Like maybe at the beginning, it was a lot like you want to go play basketball and like introduce kids to Jesus. But now I see a lot more of like even you just saying, I'm not playing basketball tonight and I'm just going to hang out with kids and like talk to kids. So it's cool like how it's shifted. You still would always play basketball and you're always down to school some kid and one-on-one or whatever. But I think seeing you kind of grow that into like working one-on-one with kids off the basketball court has been really cool to watch. And so, yeah, I guess maybe talk a little bit about like what you've learned as a volunteer, like what makes your time as a volunteer really, really fun, or like what keeps you coming back?
Yeah, I think kind of what you're mentioning at the end is that I think when you first start volunteering, like the Way specifically, like you just kind of want to like get on the same level as the kids per se, like kind of like earn the right to speak to them. I think that's a term you use a lot.
Good, yeah.
So like, I don't think I think that means developing those relationships. So whether that's, them seeing you play basketball and think you're good. And then that point, I can kind of speak into them now, or it just turned from just playing basketball to saying, okay, well, how can we really affect these kids' lives? And that's, whether that's texting them, taking them out somewhere like on a weekend or to movies, whatever. And I think it was that shift where, saying like, hey, basketball's going to end, at some point we got to actually start making a, legitimate change, or at least let them see kind of what right might look like if they, because there's a lot of kids that don't see that at all.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Yeah, and so the other thing that we like to do is you're not from this area originally. You're from North Carolina, city boy.
I'm from Rock Hill, which is a South Carolina.
Are you really?
Yeah, so it's right on the boards.
Gotcha.
Boards. Right on the border between North Carolina and South Carolina, about 20 minutes from Charlotte.
Okay.
So, you go to Carowinds too on the way.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Right on it's right beside it.
Yeah, but you've talked about spending a lot of time in Charlotte. Is that or just like playing basketball and like or in that area? Is that kind of where you learned to love basketball and whatnot?
I was thinking about this, and my parents put me into it was called like City Hoops or something like that when we were like 8 or 9 maybe.
Okay.
And me and my brother were the only white people on our teams. So, and it was an amazing experience because it was just, totally different level of talent than we were used to playing.
Yeah.
And I would say for, 3-4 years there, that's who we grew up hanging out with, talking with, even though like we didn't, maybe live near each other or whatnot. I mean, it really broke the barriers basketball did. So
that's cool.
And it also really helped us get better.
Yeah.
So,
that's cool.
I think that was really where basketball was introduced and where I fell in love with it.
Yeah.
So then how did you end up down here from Rock Hill?
Yeah, so I went to Anderson University. I have some family in this area, so I ended up going to Anderson. There was really no rhyme or reason to it. Graduated from Anderson. I actually loved the area, but when I graduated, I had a job offer in Charlotte. I went and worked in Charlotte for about a year or two, and then at that point, I was like, I wanted to move back to the upstate, and a year or two later, I moved back and have been here since. So
Gotcha.
about 6-7 years now.
Maybe that's where I got the idea that you were from Charlotte.
Yeah.
So did you, did you know Kristen before you moved back to Charlotte, or did you meet her since moving here?
So I met her when I moved back.
Okay,
Yeah.
Cool. And yeah, for all those listening, Kristen is Mark's wife.
Yes.
How long have you guys been married?
We've been married a little over 2 years. Some people call me Mark Clardy.
Mark Clardy.
Yeah, I took on her last name.
That's true.
Well, I mean, everybody knows who the Clardies are in this area, so it's. I guess that would be to your benefit.
That's correct.
So, I guess I like what you were saying about the like you and your brother being the only white kids, and how that kind of changed it probably changed your perspective on like just being around people of the opposite race, because it's not like I mean, even without necessarily being like racist in a community, it still kind of feels like there's a barrier sometimes.
Yeah.
And I even see that like with volunteers at the way, like even from the style of basketball that's played. Like a lot of our teens that come, they like the showboating, individual, talk trash, all that, where it's not like they don't hate you as an individual, but some of the things they say on the court would really make you think otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think probably of all the staff, you have the best relatability to those kids, just because you kind of know that style already. And like, so I guess that's to your advantage that you kind of had that in your past. So yeah, basically what I'm kind of getting at is like, for someone who's come from a background of like, even from what me and Randall was like, playing high school basketball at a school where it was all white kids and all playing, like what's one thing that what's one piece of advice to someone coming in and like wanting to volunteer to play basketball with kids that played a completely different style or maybe act completely different?
I think you hit the nail on the head, is that although it might be different, it's nothing personal. Mm-hmm. So like, if you're playing and it's a rougher sport or than you might be used to, or a little more talking, once you get off the court, none of that means anything.
Yeah.
So like, you can kind of embrace it, enjoy it, laugh with it when you're on the court. Just don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Have fun with it.
Yeah.
And I think if you can take it with that mindset, I mean, you'll actually start to enjoy that type of play.
Yeah, and you do enjoy it. I can tell.
It goes too far sometimes.
Sometimes it's a little too much. Yes. But yeah, cool. I guess we'll just keep on moving. What has been the most rewarding part about volunteering? I guess that can be either at the way or things that you've done in the past. Like what kind of drives you to keep on volunteering your time?
So when it comes to volunteering, I think what most people, including myself, you don't realize until you do it, is that you think that you're the one giving and like you're pouring yourself out or doing something, but once you do that act and whatnot, you realize that you get so much from it. Yeah. Like, and I think you only realize what that means, and I'm probably not explaining it well until you do it. because once you might feel like, hey, I'm really pouring into a kid and stuff, and then they say something to you, and it's like, wow, that made me feel good, and it's like you give, but you actually get a lot. So I mean, I think we think about giving and ministry in a way where we have to like go serve, and a lot of times I feel like we get filled up ourselves.
Yeah, that's good.
In the work itself.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that happens really no matter where you volunteer. Anytime you give of yourself, especially when it's people oriented, like just from that kind of thing in my history, you end up learning a lot more about the world and yourself that you maybe never even considered, and you would never know if you hadn't stepped out and given that time. Yeah,
I hear that a lot with folks who go on abroad mission trips. They thought they were going to spread the word and whatnot, which they are, but they come back and they're the ones filled up. And and I think the same thing with our mission fields, in Oconee County or whatnot.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because it almost seems without fail, anyone who's involved in anything, or even if you go anywhere, it's always the same story of like, I came back filled, and like I get so much joy out of this, and it kind of makes you, like, everybody says that, but it's almost hard to believe sometimes, like, because you're like, well, how can you actually get enjoyment out of it if you're just basically sacrificing your time for someone else? But it seems like with all the people just over and over, everybody would be like, oh, I'm volunteering. Oh, I'm giving up my time. But it is a lot harder of a commitment than just saying like, yeah, sure, I'm in. So it's a lot more.
Well, and specifically with the way, I don't know that there's really anything more intimidating than trying to get in with a group of teenagers.
Oh my, yeah.
When you're, I mean, even if you're just a couple years older than the group that's there, it feels like you're a lifetime away from their experience. And I don't spend a lot of time on things like TikTok, and it just, as far as being a part of the in crowd, I guess, how have you experienced that, just from like, how do you even get to a place where they're willing to talk to you, or how do you get past that? Because initially when you show up, it's intimidating. You don't really know what to say. What has helped you get past some of that?
Well, I think that intimidation's always there, for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean,
you want to hear.
I think it really is.
No,
but it's also humbling, you know. I think it's the easiest way is developing one-on-ones. I think it's very tough to get a group of specifically boys to just open up and talk to you, especially about life. So I think it's, trying to get one-on-one conversations here and there every week. Hey, well, how's it going? This and that. And then, the more consistently you're able to do that, the more you develop those relationships.
Yeah. And that probably goes along with what you were saying about how initially you're playing basketball, but then the real relationship happens outside of that day-to-day life, with maybe just a couple teens at a time going and doing really anything, any normal life activity.
Yeah. And you also see people like Mike and Phil who used to do it, and they do it so effortlessly, and you're like,
that's true.
These are just kids. Talk to them, and because I think it can be so intimidating. I get intimidated around the girls, especially. But when you see other people do it that are there, and it makes you kind of gives you the courage to say, okay, well, not afraid of rejection here.
Well, and that's such a big part of it, because I think as put together as some people can look, in the end, I don't know that we know what we're doing ever. Like,
exactly.
And it just takes that, I think, availability and just showing up means about as much to the people, like the teens there, or really anyone, whatever ministry you're in. Half of the work is just showing up and being available.
I think what you said like consistently doing this, like I think that's the biggest thing. Like you can be the greatest person to ever talk to any teen, but if you're only there like once and then they don't see you again for another 6 months, like what good does that do? So it's not like you you don't really get anywhere with anyone. I mean, we're talking about teens, but it's kind of the same with anyone that you're trying to help out in life or you're trying to be there for. Like, you actually have to be there to actually make that difference. And so if you're able to consistently do that with someone, that means a lot more than just being able to talk good or say something really profound. So, yeah. I don't know. But yeah, as far as teens go, it's just the thing. It's no one has the answer to it, I don't think. It's just you live and you learn. So, but yeah. I guess kind of shifting a little bit, not really shifting, but talking about, so like you volunteer at the Way and you do that, for those that don't know, like it's every Thursday night. And so you're there pretty much almost every week. I mean, you do take weeks off and stuff like that, but how do you balance, like going between work, the ministry, your home life, your personal life? Like, how does that all balance in your head? Like, where do you feel like, do you ever draw the line at, like, if a teen asks you, like, hey, can you do this with me? Or like, how do you balance that mentally? Like being able to work all the way to 5 o'clock or 5:30 and then go straight to the youth center. Like, how have you found, like, what helps you with that?
I think the biggest thing is having a supportive wife. Okay. And having a wife that wants to be involved as well. So, like, if we can, instead of, I don't know, whatever we would do on a Thursday evening, go out to eat or hang out at the house, I mean, we're at the Way together. Yeah. So, cool. I mean, it's something we can do together. She enjoys. Yeah. And so, I mean, I would encourage people to do it with your spouse.
That's good. Yeah.
I mean, and secondly, just in balance, I think, and I really, me and Alex joke about this a lot. I think, if something's important to you, like, you can make time for it.
Yeah. That's good.
So, I mean, that's what I think about with balance. I think when you balance your load each week and whatnot, you know what you're going to make time for and what you're not. And if the Way or whatever it is important, I mean, you'll be there. Yeah. Or you'll be there every other week, or, you know, as much as you can.
Yeah. That's good. What's important to you, you'll make time for. I like that. And yeah, Alex does need to hear that sometimes. True. Chuckles from the producer in the background.
He's got a lot going on.
Yeah, he does have a lot going on. Anyway, but yeah, another thing is, do you ever set aside? We talked a little bit about this with JD when we were talking to him, and he said that one thing he always does, he tries to, like, take time for Sabbath and, like, just take time for rest, because he's bivocational. He's pastors and then he works. So it's like he tries to take that specific time to just set aside for just him and his wife, or like even just his time to read and write and stuff like that. Do you have any, like, routines throughout your week that are like, this is my time just to kind of take time to rest?
I mean, I think Sundays for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
I mean, it's sitting around basically all day. Might get a little pickleball in, but besides that, to me, that's rest. Like, it rests my mind because I'm not thinking about anything. Yeah. So I think that, and then, you know, at night, you know, always try to, you know, calm your mind and, you know, read through some form of scripture, whether it's devotional or whatnot, and praying. Like, me and Kristen, I think, do a good job of praying with each other, you know, every night before bed. Yeah. So just, I think in regards to, like, getting your mind cleared and stuff, I think you just have to make that time, whether it's 10, 20, 30 minutes a day, and then specifically one day for sure a week.
Yeah. Do you do pretty good at, like I know for me, even, like, if I go on vacation or if I go on, like, I say, like, Sunday is my day of rest, but then if something comes up, I'm like, you know what, I think I can swing it. Like, I think I can just do that on Sunday. Like, I know it's my day of rest. Are you good at just, like, setting it aside, or is that something that's really hard for you to do? Or even, like, if you get a call that's work related on, like, the weekend, are you good at just being like, it's fine to wait till Monday, or, like?
No, I'm not good at that. So, I don't know. I'm just kind of a get things done now. I totally think I need to grow in that area. Yeah. One thing I will say, you know, someone like JD or, you know, whoever, you know, they've had kids, and, you know, and we don't currently have kids. Yeah. So, I mean, our schedule, you know, is probably a lot freer than others.
That's true.
So, I mean, I don't feel overwhelmed
Yeah.
in life, at least at this stage. So, so when you talk about balancing and stuff like that, I mean, right now, I think balancing is fairly easy.
Yeah.
But I could see that getting tougher if you did have kids.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
Yeah. No, I think.
And not that any of us can speak to that. I
mean, yeah, I feel the same way. Sometimes it's like some people say that they feel so overwhelmed and they have to actually like, whatever. Like there are times that mentally I feel really overwhelmed, but as far as like week to week, I never feel like I don't have time to do stuff. It's more like the mental, like, am I actually gonna, like, it's what you said, if it's important enough, you're gonna make time. So like I have time in the week, but it's that mental of like, is it important enough for me to be like, yeah, I'm gonna commit time to it.
And I think sometimes we don't realize how much time we actually have until it's like gone. For me, it was when I was working at the boys' camp and working 24/5, and then you don't actually have time because 5 days out of the week you're working, kind of. I mean, from when you wake up to when you go to bed, you're taking care of these boys. And I realized through some of that how much time I actually have, even though I work a 9-to-5 job. Evenings, it depends on whether you're going to view your time as yours to spend or something that you can hold loosely and give away too.
Yeah, that's good.
But that's a good word.
That is good. Preach.
Preach that thing.
Cool. Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't know what else I could ask about that, because I think you hit the nail on the head about just what you make time for and all that. Do you have any fun, and it doesn't have to be a story, but like what's one thing that has brought you like a lot of joy from like maybe like an individual relationship at the way? It's kind of a little bit off subject, but like you don't have to name any names specifically, but you could say like what's one instant where you're like, this is fun, this has clicked? Because we were even talking with JD about how a lot of what we do when we work with people is you might not have that instant gratification, and so sometimes like when you're looking to volunteer somewhere, you're like, you can be there for like 3 months and you don't see anything, so you're like, this sucks, I'm not doing anything. But maybe if you could share like what's one thing that has kind of come from like that long consistent that you're like really excited about or proud of.
I'll name, so I would say just my relationship with Jason. So like Jason's been at the way for forever. I mean probably 10 years. I mean, cause I think he grew up in the kids center that transitions to the way. So, for a couple years there, I mean, I don't know if we just didn't get along or didn't click or whatever. And, he's rambunctious and kind of wild and crazy sometimes. And one day I was just kind of getting on to him. Like, I don't know exactly what happened. And he just sat there and was, I sat down beside him, and he was just like, why do y'all even talk to me? Y'all don't even care about me. And like we had known each other, but not really. And I said, what do you mean? He's like, you don't even have my phone number. He's like, I only see you one day a week, and you don't even really know who I am. And I mean, it really kind of hit me hard, because I mean, he was right. Like, I mean, we, could laugh and joke on Thursdays, but like, I didn't really have a relationship. Wow. And, from that day, I mean, we text, I mean, we Instagram, we just seeing our relationship grow. I mean, I think he just respects, I think, all of us counselors now. Yeah. And it's just really grown, but it really took me to say, okay, I need to be taking things, a step further, at least with those willing to do that.
Yeah. I actually, like, that situation you were talking about, I like vividly remember that in my head. And I still have like that mental picture of you guys sitting there like and talking about it, because it was one of those things like Jason just kind of just put it out there in front of everybody how he was feeling, and you like pulled him to the side and sat down with him and just like talked it out. Like I wasn't listening, like I wasn't there for your conversation, but that mental image of like you guys sitting on the court and just talking about it. And it's crazy to think that like before that you were just kind of showing up and like being there, but like when you actually took that step and like that's a big thing for someone, like to take a teen and be like, here, come, let's talk about this. Yeah. But I see that all the time, even with the teens that I have to pull aside, whether it's a good thing or what. Sometimes it's like a lot of times it's a bad thing. Yeah. But it's like when they when you actually take the time and like hear them out and like hear why they're upset, and then actually just like, because we all love, like we love getting to know them, and you love hanging out with Jason. I love hanging out with Jason and Roman and Dreek and all those guys. Like they're fun to get to know, but they won't usually open up until you just take that step. And I think like since you've done that with Jason, it's been really cool to see like he respects you a lot more now than he did ever before. So
well, and I think too, one thing you get from the group of teens, kids in general, they have a way of seeing into situations pretty clearly. Like they know your intentions, and they know when you're just there to show up and just play basketball on a Thursday night, and you don't really actually care that much about them. Yeah. And I think that's just a good example of a situation where you think you're maybe doing a ministry or something on a Thursday night by being there, but you end up learning so much about yourself, how you're approaching the situation, stuff you're totally blind to, until a teen just kind of says it how it is, and you think you're there to kind of set their lives straight, but then all of a sudden they turn around and land one of those on you, and you realize that maybe you're actually the one with something to learn.
Yeah, that's good.
It happens pretty often.
Yeah, because they will not hesitate to say whatever they think. Yeah. If they think you're being disrespectful, if they think you're not treating someone fairly, if they think anything, they'll say it, and like they don't.
And they're usually right.
Oh, I know. Like, and it's except when people call you a liar and say that you're all that, then sometimes they're okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna have to edit that. That's not appropriate.
No, that was anyway. Yeah, but it's fun.
Timestamp, please.
Timestamp. No, that's good. But yeah, I think it's been cool to watch. I guess I don't want to puff you up too much, but it's been cool to watch like you like, because even I knew you first as the guy who was at the Way, and then I guess I met you first when I called you about a house or something like that. Or like I talked to you first, but then I met you at the Way, and then that's how I know you, is through the Way. And so it's cool to see that like your identity to me is someone who I see serving and like pouring into that community, and not necessarily your 9 to 5, where there's a lot of people that I could ask, like, do you know Mark Vehaun? And they'd be like, oh yeah, he's a mortgage guy. But to me, it's like Mark Vehaun is a lot. He's not the mortgage guy. He's the guy who like actually gives and all that. So it's cool. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing out on if you don't like actually take that time and make time for things that are important and that are really good for you. Is I think you can learn a lot and you can really grow. So yeah. Yeah, that's not to buff you up too much. Yeah. Don't need you to get a big head.
It's big right now.
He already has a big enough head. Yeah. So anyway, I guess we'll wrap up here. Our last question, and we're gonna keep this consistent for every single person that comes on our podcast.
That's the plan anyway.
Yeah, that's the plan. And so we're gonna ask anyone this for anyone that comes on is, what's one thing the world needs more of and why?
I had to think about this one for a long time.
Yeah. Did you consult some friends on this too?
No, I went straight into that big brain of mine.
Nice.
The puffed up brain, I mean. So this might be a little controversial take.
Okay.
So I think this is specifically to I'm going to answer this as from the church.
Okay.
I think the world needs more of Christians who are, part of our church to be willing to volunteer in their local communities.
Okay.
I think we hit on this. I hit on this a tad bit. I think when church or a lot of Christians, including myself for a long time, think missions. You think, oh, I need to go to Africa, or I need to, which is not bad. I'm not saying that. Or I can only go I need to go there to be on the mission field. Mm-hmm. And there are so many nonprofits in this area. I mean, the Way is one of them. The Pregnancy Center, food banks, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. If every person in the church actually volunteered, outside the church and were the hands and feet of Christ, I mean, I can't imagine what our world will look like.
Yeah.
And that's just what I think it needs more of.
Yeah, and that's very practical and very applicable to anyone who's listening. Is that like, what can you do? And yeah, like the idea of, that's how it was for me for a very long time. Even like when I decided I wanted to move to Phoenix, even that felt a lot more like ministry than doing anything here, was because I was leaving. And I'm not saying no one should ever do that, because it was really good.
Oh, we're called to do it.
Yeah,
some people are.
You're supposed to go out, but I think just you not being called to go out shouldn't be an excuse for you not to do anything.
Yeah,
and I think that's what you're saying, is that there's so much opportunity.
There's so many opportunities just in Seneca that could use Christians there, because there's a lot of non-Christians who are willing to volunteer. So it's not just Christians. So and we want people who are Christians that are not just volunteering, but also doing it for Christ as well.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, and I think what you see specifically in the church, what you're talking about, is it's so easy to build a kingdom for yourself.
Yeah.
With your house as your castle, and your community is a group of safe people that you're comfortable around. And when, what we're actually called to is to go out, we build the kingdom by, I think, like you said, first step is just your community. Mm-hmm. And that could start in Seneca. And, we have believers all over South Carolina, the United States. If we all would do that right where we're at, it would change the world in a huge way. But just starting with the individual, you can just go do that. Mm-hmm. And that's, like we were saying earlier, that's why we wanted you on, and why we wanted to do this interview with somebody who's maybe not a pastor, because it's not just the pastors that do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even coming from the standpoint of being the director of an organization, and I know, speaking to other organization directors, it's like, if there would be, instead of 5 people willing to help you out, if there would be 20, 25 people, it would be insane, the amount that just exponential. So, and it would be just exciting to see more excitement and more, people just really just committing to it and saying, I'm here, I'm ready to serve.
Yeah. And willing to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. And not necessarily just chasing that 9 to 5 and just giving their time that way, and even viewing their work as their ministry, which you can use your work as ministry, but not using that as an excuse to not do anything else. I think, that's right. It's practical.
Yeah. I think about work as ministry a lot, but a lot of times, I would say, at least where we work at, most of the people we work with are Christians. Yeah. So, yes, it's a mission field, and you should still, love your neighbors and love the Christians around you well. I totally agree. But, it's that, to me, just, I think it's just such not a cop-out, but it's just I'm doing that at work. Yeah. But, they're already believers and all sign up at their church and their nursery. So they're all, they're all good people.
No, that's so true.
So, and I just think just stepping outside of that into the community, and it's not every day. Even at for example, the Way, it doesn't have to be the Way. There's 100 ministries.
Yeah.
You do every other week. I mean, it's not a lot of time. So, and doing that, helps refresh other volunteers and whatnot too.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, that's good. And I think it's good that ending on that note of something as practical, everybody listening can be like, they're now charged with something. Don't just be that normal person who works 9 to 5, goes home, and just kind of does whatever they want. But instead, like, take that step. Like you said, it could only be like once every other week, or it could be once every week. Like, take that extra step and be like, I'm going to commit this time and get excited. And there's so many other organizations. We talked about the Way, but like you said, Foothills Care Center, even like the thrift stores around here, they always need help. The Ripple, they always need help. There's so many different people in this community, and we're hoping to spotlight some of them on this podcast. But there's so many people that need help. If we could all just be a little bit more willing to give our time, that would be really cool to see. I think the world and Oconee County would benefit a ton from that. So, yeah.
Can we get an official pronunciation of your last name for the podcast?
Yeah, so it depends on which country you're in.
Where does it come from?
I have no idea. It's Vehaun.
Vehaun.
Yes, I don't think Mike even knew that.
I literally always say.
I think weren't you saying it right?
I was saying it right this podcast, but I always say Mark Vehaun.
Yes, yeah, I just let him do it.
That's what I always hear.
I don't think I've ever corrected you.
Vehaun. So like the E doesn't even need to be there. It could just be V dash.
Exactly.
So now we know.
It's just Vehaun.
Anyway, thank you, Mark Vehaun, for being our.
Sounds weird that you said it right.
I know. Thank you for being our first guest. And definitely encouraged from our conversation. And I hope, I know a lot of people that are going to listen to this are going to also be encouraged. So, thanks for coming on. Thanks for making time for us.
Thank you both for having me.
Yeah. So, anyway, I think that's a wrap.
All right.